Good morning. It's June 21st, 2022 at 07:32. I'll call the SELCO Commission meeting to order. Present physically, Maria Lemieux, Michael Ruffolo, Tony Trippi, and Bob Holland, along with our General Manager, Christopher Roy, and staff from SELCO. Remotely, Mr. Matt Beaton is also with us as far as our fifth person for the committee. So we've called the meeting to order. Next situation is to say that review and consider approval of the bill schedules and warrants. There are 5 warrants, I think, in.
Where are they?
Okay, I've got a copy right here, and I'll sign this one and send it around.
Oh, I've got them.
You got them all? Okay. With that said, while that's being done, we'll move on to the next item. And that will be review and consider approval of the meeting minutes of April 19th, 2022, and May 24th, 2022. First, we'll take the meeting minutes of April 19th, 2022. Do I have any comments on those minutes?
Yeah, I just have one comment.
Yes, sir.
The in my question on it's under number 4 regarding the MWEC working capital assessment. It states that M. Ruffolo asked if there are any there was any historical precedent at SELCO for having that much funds at hand. I just want to clarify, it's at SELCO for MWEC having that much
And
of,
we're for SELCO.
Yep.
yeah, cash on hand, and then I asked whether the funds are escrowed. That was my question.
Okay. And they are. Funds are escrowed, and they do have the, okay.
Yep, they had all that stuff. Yep.
Okay. Any other comments, or, no? If not, can I have a motion to accept the April 19th minutes?
So move.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And we'll move on to May 24th minutes. Any comments, questions on the minutes of May 24th? Hearing none, do I have a motion to accept the minutes of May 24th?
So move.
Okay, and I'll second, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Minutes for the 24th of May are accepted. Next on the agenda is review the 2021 cable audited financial statements.
So this is just going to be an update quickly to explain why they're not ready, and we're going to see if we can do a July meeting possibly to get them all in. But basically, this year there was a compounding amount of things that led up to this, but one of the things that we decided to do, because tax day was in April, is we decided to push our audit till May because we knew it would kind of help out. Well, that kind of put us on the back burner, so that's one thing we learned for next year. We're still going to keep it in April, present in May. But then timing-wise, we have one issue we're looking into where we believe that there might have to be an adjustment to accrued depreciation, and just trying to get together with our auditor, we haven't been able to get that timing to really meet and go through the whole idea, especially because we're moving into a new system this year, and I just warned her if we don't get this correct off the bat, we're going to have adjustments next year again, and she wants to avoid doing 2 years of adjustments. So we're looking at the best way to kind of handle that. We weren't really able to meet until 2 weeks ago, and then there was a bunch of stuff that came up that didn't let us get her this stuff in time to make sure she got it. One of them being me. Had to go to emergency medical that night. Yeah. But so we can't meet with her again until the beginning of July. She is out on audits and stuff like that, so we're trying to just work through this and figure out the best way. We do have the rest of the adjustments, though, so we're going to try to move forward with that. But we're looking to not wait until September to present them.
Any questions or comments from the board?
How much is the adjustment that is in question?
Well, that's what we're looking at. We
Is there a
had
range?
we had different numbers. I was looking at more in the $1 million range
Okay.
for the prior periods. Right now, what we're looking at is we're talking about just adjusting 2021 so that we can make the rest of the adjustment in 2022 to ensure that as we break out the detail of the fixed assets to go into the system, there's no adjustments needed. So math is gonna be one way. There's only one way it'll work when you go to put it in the system. Right now, we're converting historical sheets that don't have a lot of detail behind them to say, okay, this is what we believe it should be. And the question is, if there's anything as we do, a more in-depth analysis into this that says, hey, we actually have to break this out a little bit more in the numbers and there's a minor change, we don't want to do the double adjustment, if you will. So we're correcting what it should be as of right now for 2021, but we're going to look back at the historical more as I get more in-depth into these numbers to see what should they really be.
Okay.
My head hurts.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm with you.
I am not used to the delay that we've seen this year. I also understand with the turnover of the financials and setting up a new program that this is to be received, to be noted. I'll let you know I'm not happy about it. I would very much like to see this report wrapped up in July, because I think we will need a meeting in July, depending upon what the board decides, for this and for some other reasons. But I don't want to see this happen next year.
No, I'm completely with you. And this was just, it's an unfortunate snowballing effect where one of our auditors ended up getting COVID for a period of time, so we didn't get to meet, you know what I mean? And then just the way they have engagements, there wasn't available time to meet.
Noted. I
but
noted,
that-
and it's the first year, the growing pains. I won't be as lenient or as receiving on growing pains next year.
Nope,
Okay,
understood.
so it looks like July will be it.
Sounds good.
And if it's not going to be July, the sooner we know about it, the better.
Yep,
So all board members will be aware of what's happening there. Okay?
sounds good.
Anything else on that? If not, we shall move on to the next item, which is review the Smart Source Consulting Cable Financial Analysis. Who's got that for us?
There's a lot of stuff in it.
Yep.
Good morning.
Hey,
How are you guys today?
Good.
it's God.
So, you want to do a quick intro, Chris? on Smart Source?
We are not worthy.
So, late last year, we engaged with Smart Source Consulting. Chris, myself, Joelle, and Jim have spent an awful lot of time digging into the numbers on the cable side of the business, and they're going to present the results of their financial analysis to us today. So I will let Curtis Dean and Todd Kylkoff, did I say that right, Todd?
Close enough.
Close enough. They're going to run with the information they have here, and I believe, Curtis, you should be able to share your screen A-okay.
Yeah,
It's for Tony.
great. Hopefully you can see a slide deck coming up here.
Yep.
Excellent. All right. Well, hey, we want to thank you for the opportunity to, first of all, the opportunity to work with SELCO and your team, and also the opportunity to present a summary of the study that, the report that we have concluded here recently. We were hired, Smart Source Consulting is me. My name is Curtis Dean. Kilcoff Advisory Services is Todd Kilcoff, the other gentleman with the blue shirt on. We were hired to help SELCO gain a deeper understanding of the current operational strategies. And that included taking a look at product and service offerings, the operating price structures, cost structures, I should say, pricing of services, interactivity within the cable plant, like cable utility, but also with electric, looking at capital projects, and also looking at a range of 10-year financial outcomes given the current trends and strategies. Pardon me, got to advance my slide here. That's where I was just at, sorry about that. The report that we've created was a result of 20+ meetings with community stakeholders and also with the SELCO leadership team. And we decided it was best strategically to divide the planning and implementation of the process into 3 stages. The baseline modeling, which is what we're reporting on primarily today, a look at 3-year transitional strategies, and then expansion planning after that. As part of our process, we reviewed background data sources, including the recent customer survey. Also, we confirmed the interpretation of the current strategies, status and near-term strategies, and long-term concepts that you should explore. We modeled some changes to be considered moving forward, especially as SELCO transitions to a new fiber network. We developed a SWOT analysis based on the information gathered and modeled financial impacts. We wrote a situational assessment section of the report to detail key operating and financial factors in that SWOT analysis. We provided preliminary recommendations with feedback to be further evaluated and details to be implemented in later stages. Demonstrated the high and low pro forma financial outcomes with some financial reserve targets taken into account. We summarized the analysis and outcomes in a FAQ format at the end of the report to categorize the recommendations to those that are going to impact your customers, those that impact management strategies, and those that impact your external stakeholders. So some of the key strategy conclusions that we developed, first of all, on the customer-facing side, we think it's important to continue building on your excellent overall reputation in the community, especially as you transition away from the traditional cable TV product. Accelerating the conversion from RF to fiber by leveling broadband rates between those who are on the old system and those on the new systems. That will help you get that old system phased out quicker and start to capitalize on some operating cost savings. On the management strategy side, we looked at implementing long-term financial targets for sustainable operations and capital projects. Also, properly accounting for the transitioning workload, public benefit services, and rising inflation. And finally, looking at external stakeholders, a key conclusion would be an effort to evolve the town franchise into a payment in lieu of tax calculation, and to be more intentional and transparent in the cost of the public services that SELCO is providing to the community. We used a SWOT analysis technique to take a look at this. You're probably all familiar with this. When you do a SWOT analysis, strengths are internal attributes that help you succeed. Weaknesses are internal attributes that are working against you. Opportunities are external attributes that could be leveraged to help the organization. And those threats are external attributes that could be harmful to you. The key factors that we looked at kind of fell into three main categories: organizational, operational, and financial. On the organizational side, certainly a huge strength that you have is a great brand identity. Your customers love you. You have done a great job of providing excellence in customer care and service. And you are seen and perceived throughout the community as a very strong community resource, and indeed you are. Among the weaknesses we identified, there is a perception among some that maybe SELCO had rested on its laurels for some years, as one person put it, waiting too long to begin that fiber rebuild and then it taking too long to complete. The $10 higher charge for fiber service versus cable internet service has really had an unintended consequence of slowing down conversions from RF to fiber in the areas where the fiber is complete. And finally, there is a perception among some of your customers that your internet rates are higher than they are in neighboring communities. We see some good organizational opportunities, though. One of the things that we found in conversations with stakeholders is just the value that the Shrewsbury Media Center seems to bring to the community. We think that could be leveraged to deploy messaging as a key asset, and also helping your creator economy, people that are basically creating income through you doing certain streaming activities, YouTube, TikTok, etc. Also, the SELCO, or the Shrewsbury Media Center, could be a key asset in helping establish community-wide digital literacy and digital inclusion programs. The community is expecting to see increased population through infill. That's according to the most recent housing study. So you do have some potential growth within your existing boundaries that could help you in the future. But there's also the potential for growth beyond your community boundaries if SELCO chooses to identify areas immediately adjacent to town and do an expansion there. Finally, the organizational threat, the key one we see is that there's going to continue to be upward pressure on wages, both for your technical and your non-technical personnel. On the operational side, some of the key strengths, again, bouncing back to your staff. They do an excellent job, and they've done a great job of serving your customers and operating your network efficiently and with high reliability. The big weakness is that you are not operating two networks, and that is less efficient than operating one. So the RF plant, as it ages, becomes more and more difficult to maintain and more expensive to maintain. Opportunities, your fiber network is certainly capable of meeting all your customers' needs today and for many, many years to come. You have a clear path, upgrade path as needed, so you are well positioned in the future. We also think that offering public Wi-Fi could be an opportunity for you in areas where that is deemed to be beneficial. Perhaps a model where your existing customers, if they have your internet service at home or at their business, they get to use it free. Others would have some sort of paywall or limited time use of that public Wi-Fi. And also, you know, as you're transitioning to what is essentially an over-the-top video solution through Minerva, you know, your customers are already transitioning to over-the-top, so it might allow you to preserve more of those people because your over-the-top video solution is going to be as comprehensive or more comprehensive than anything on the market. So there is potential there to keep a good percentage of those folks.
Could I just ask a question?
Yes.
Sorry. What do you mean by over the top?
Well, that means video that is delivered through the internet. Okay. So right now, over the top solutions are like, you know, YouTube TV and Hulu Plus and products like that. Your Minerva product will work much the same way. Once that transition takes place, a person could purchase your services, put an app on their Fire Stick and stream that video just as if it were your old RF plant. So it's so similar to that it's not going to be as big a transition to people that are already using over the top. And although you will be able to offer a set-top solution as well for people that aren't comfortable with an app-based solution. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, you
New
bet.
terminology for me.
Hey, no problem. We in the telecom business have a real problem with three-letter acronyms, so my apologies there. Your threats really are focused on potential competition now or in the future through an overbuilder or through some sort of wireless competition. We think that threat's kind of low because you guys really have the market cornered, and anybody looking at the market data would see that the opportunity is probably smaller than other areas. Cybersecurity is a big threat for everybody, and a serious cybersecurity attack could really knock you or your organization down. You know, not only they have a big effect on SELCO operations, but also its customers, and so that needs to be continually monitored on the operational side. Finally, on the financial side, I'm going to let Todd talk a little bit about some of the things that need to be addressed financially and are as part of our SWOT analysis.
Sure. Really, there's a lot of things that SELCO can build off to enhance the services to customers and improve the bottom line. From a strength to your operating and capital reserve funding levels provide you substantial risk protection without needing to raise rates if you get into an environment that needs to transition on the pricing side. Your gross margin on the products offers sustainable operations given operating economies of scale. And you have an established customer base with growing demand for higher tier services, which brings higher gross margins. So we've looked at those and confirmed all of those trends. From a weaknesses standpoint, there's an over-reliance on set-top box rental fees off your old cable RF plant, which will be greatly reduced after the fiber transition is completed and as we go through the Minerva. So, but due to the current franchise, also cable customers are paying substantial amounts to support the town operations. And again, that support is over-reliant on set-top box fees. So the opportunity is to take a look at increased average revenue per customer as more customers upgrade to higher internet tiers. So that's really the driver of your revenue growth. You do have an ability to participate in the Affordable Connectivity Plan, which is a federal program that could lower costs for qualifying households to connect that does not have a financial impact on SELCO, but it maintains those customers that may otherwise feel pinched on their internet rates. Also, we've taken a look at how to maximize E-rate funding. So schools and libraries get reimbursed for their activities in terms of connectivity. And the way you're structured, we're not sure that it's being fully maximized to pass through the cost of your rebuild to the fiber plant. From a threat standpoint, prices for materials and labor for the RF or for the fiber overbuild is getting more expensive. It's likely these increases will have an impact on that final stage. And so really when we're setting targets for 5 to 10 years, we need to account for that inflation. The transition could mean more cord cutting, especially from cable TV customers that have very low internet usage needs. That's just going to be something that customer education we feel will be needed. Also, you're kind of peaking at your market share in a competitive environment in terms of how people are spending their money. So in the end, you're limiting the ability to meet operational inflation in an environment where you have rising bandwidth per customer usage. So if you look over the next 5 to 10 years, that's where we really need to encourage people to figure out what they're using that higher bandwidth for, and that it's a value to them for you to deliver it. Also, then we talked about how new competitors could force SELCO to lower rates or impact revenues through customer attrition. Again, that would probably be your lowest demanding customers, not your highest demanding, particularly those that are needing symmetrical upgrade or upstream and downstream. As we move into our product recommendations, again, we've looked at possibly being able to bundle managed Wi-Fi with internet and phone bundles as the financial targets are met. In other words, that's an amount right now that's being added for people to have more of a worry-free Wi-Fi, and maybe that's something that could be bundled in. We can complete the transition to the fiber network and retire the RF cable system by 2027. I think setting a goal helps customers understand what that transition looks like for them, and the services will change. Shifting costs away from internet customers with the new franchise and a payment in lieu of tax. In other words, we want to make sure that as we're moving things over from a television standpoint, that it doesn't get shifted fully to internet, because you want to remain rate competitive with neighboring communities on that. And then fully transition to the over-the-top television again, investigate other services for the customer base. So we feel that as the internet has become more ubiquitous on coverage, that there are other whole home type activities that are using that bandwidth that you may position SELCO to be a service provider for. On the TV product itself, again, transitioning to the Minerva TV platform is a big operational gain for you. In that, we're recommending to offer both bring your own device and set-top rental options for those that don't want to have their own devices to connect to that internet connection. And then include base DVR recording services with storage upgrade options. We found in other communities that's a nice margin service, and customers appreciate having that ability. In terms of pricing, the cable TV rate strategy should really be to cover all programming costs and other costs, plus $8 to $10 per month for partial operations recovery. And then there's an additional amount that goes to the cable franchise fee. And that we've studied that, and those are just going to be continual. We all know programming keeps going up, retransmission rates keep going up, and it's just something that has to be part of the pricing strategy. Consider, again, raising the RF plant rate $5 on the internet to fully account for maintenance costs, and lower the $10 fiber network differential to reflect future operational cost savings. So we have to think that we really want to accelerate that transition to 2027, and to get customers there without having a cliff would be just narrowing that differential. The pricing needs to include capital replacement transfers to the depreciation fund at inflation adjusted levels versus original installed costs. So as we talk about your capital reserves, things are being accounted for very nicely on the amount of depreciation, but in this higher environment of rising inflation for materials, we need to really project out and say, when it comes time to build and do 7-year cycles and 5-year capital improvement plans, that we're accounting for inflation in that. And then the promoting the higher internet tiers to continue driving higher average revenue per user, and again, building the use cases and then exploring the income-based pricing through the federal ACP program. So then we did that to build high-low or a base recommendation with a lower performing model to try to show that we're accounting for the bandwidth trends, the subscriber conversion growth, inflation moderation after retiring the RF system, system replacement cycles, estimated remaining fiber construction project, and then operating cost inflation. So we end in these models, we end the reliance on TV service margin, especially set-top box rentals. So that was important for us to show that you can achieve your reserve targets that are based on general credit rating considerations for revenue-based municipal utilities. So we use some general criteria to try to say that you are adequate and that you can keep pace with inflation and financial growth. There are lower overall gross margins as the flattening subscriber growth in later years makes it challenging to maintain reserves at a percentage of revenue without setting the cost allocations, particularly between cable and electric. You're slowly, the electric utility is slowly building a use case for using that fiber connection to the premise or AMI, and as we get into other things, particularly as the transportation grid electrifies, buses, semis, you're really getting into being able to tie those two together. If we get into the low reserve model, though, we look at higher inflation. If we don't pay attention to the average revenue per user trend, if we hold on to that operating RF plant longer, or there's higher construction costs, or a combination of those things, that's where we get into lower models with lower margins. And where we really would need then to study how to recover more of the fiber construction costs from the federal E-rate program. We think that is something that would be finessed, possibly within a payment in lieu of tax with the city because of how all of your financials are tied together. So if we look at that franchise renewal, our recommendations are it should be based on the customer video charges, not including as much internet or phone, and then have a policy-based support for a payment in lieu of tax for broadband, phone, and electric utility. So those are typical in the industry, by which it is a surplus. So the surplus is an accounting definition by which you say that you have the additional revenue above and beyond your debt service for a year to make that contribution to the community. A franchise fee is considered to be a mandatory fee. Mm-hmm. So the potential then to recover those costs through the E-rate within that pilot, we'll talk a little bit about that, and then formally recognizing expenses SELCO is covering for the town, the electric utility, and other public entities. So we've looked at the operations, how they're structured in terms of the fiber route miles and things like that, and we're really not able to tell the whole story about what SELCO is really doing for the community until you maybe can modify how it is tracked internally in terms of construction projects or route miles used and the value of those. So we think that's an opportunity within the franchise renewal to say that we want the town to recognize, at least from an accounting standpoint, in some sort of report format, that you're providing substantial benefits. So then that's kind of our phase one or stage one. As we look at stage two, stage two would refine the baseline stage one projections and targets as the strategies are actually implemented and the costs are realized from the intermediate fiber build construction and doing a rolling 5-year capital improvement plan that's accounting for materials and inflation. After the town, or as the town services, the franchise fee and the pilot, the E-rate, et cetera, as those are put together, you would be into that building off the stage one projections and refining them. we get a little bit more deep into the fiber overbuild then and look at your customer adoption migration. So we do another check-in to see just if the assumptions are right about the higher tier demand trends that we're seeing now. And then customer service and maintenance schedules. We want to look at the workload, or you will want to look at the workload as the TV products are changing and the fiber overbuild, because we know that television in general is a higher customer service need, and the RF plan higher maintenance need. So you will look though at implementing new services and new technologies, and so there's going to be a blend of cost savings and then also transitions of workload. Stage 3 would then build on the customer service base set in stage 2 to broaden the customer base and still provide best-in-class services. So looking at internal to existing SELCO customers, increasing the positive benefits of SELCO throughout Shrewsbury. In other words, providing maybe some enhanced services that bring in new customers. Scaling services into other underserved markets. We know that operationally you have a very good core of the ability to leverage, and then be able to take a look at underserved markets that may be neighboring communities that need your expertise. So with that, we would take questions and comments on the presentation, the report, the path forward, and any other comments that you may have.
One kind of went hand in hand with two ways of, one was the E-rate switches for libraries and schools. Have we implemented that, or are we looking at how close are we to doing that, or is that something we want to do?
So there's definitely some investigation that needs to happen on the current process, and we need to look at ways to improve that and better leverage the opportunities that are there. And that's going to be a collaborative effort. Chris is going to need to work with the school department to kind of open up that conversation so we can go down that path.
Because, I mean, if there's a means by which they can get federal funding in lieu of our providing that, and we're charging them or in the future or whatever, it would be a good thing, I think.
What is the E-rate?
Well, E-rate's a government program, right? That
It's federal funding for connectivity for schools, libraries.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and then the other part was the affordable pricing plan, or affordable.
Yep, so the affordable connectivity plan was stood up after the emergency broadband benefits, which they had implemented during the early part of the pandemic. And the ACP has some extensive administrative acrobatics you have to do to participate, and we are looking into that. Some of the other MLPs who offer broadband here in Massachusetts have opted in, so we're connecting with them to find out what the best practice is. So we can kind of learn from others' mistakes and get that stood up. But that's something that, if we're going to be going for broadband grants from the federal government, we're going to need to participate in ACP. Plus, it's a benefit to the customers in need who need that connectivity but don't have sufficient funding to do it.
Yeah, somewhere in the next meeting or two, or even just as an info sheet, some more further explanation on that program, and how we can implement it to help the folks in Shrewsbury, because it appears that for some of the, I will say, lower income or less advantaged folks, that there may be an opportunity to recoup some monies, or at least provide them services at a lesser fee out of their pocket. Mm-hmm. So, okay.
Is that something that the customer has to apply for, or is it?
So yeah, the customer has to qualify, and there's I think a federal portal they have to go into to implement it, or input all of their data points, and then we sync up with that on our end to get reimbursement basically for their packages that they sign up for. So we may also, as a result of the ACP, be implementing a different internet package that we don't have today that sort of meets the guidelines of that program. So. Like I said, a little bit of legwork involved to get that stood up on our end.
But it's something that the customer needs to be aware of. And
Yep,
then
and so our
kind of
collections,
get to the-
yeah, our collection specialist will be involved in the implementation process and the ongoing management of it, and she is the one who interfaces with those customers most in need. And it would obviously be, we'd have information on our website as well, so if somebody's not necessarily not paying their bill, they would still be aware of the program. We'd make that publicly available.
We don't have that in place right at the moment.
Today, we do not. During the pandemic, we did our own forgiveness program, so we didn't implement the EBB.
Yep.
We found our own way through to assisting those customers in need, but now that there's a permanent program, I think that there is value in that. So.
Yeah, I'd very much like to
Yep.
make sure we're pursuing that. Okay. Maria?
Yeah, I have some questions.
Yes, sir.
First, what's our rollout plan for the fiber install? What's the time period in which we think will be complete, even with whatever delays due to the resources or?
Because we've been told to set a goal of 2027. Now, what's your story?
Okay, so on the installation side of whatever is already built, or I'm sorry, we've built up about a third of the town. We are doing about 120 installs per week. I'm sorry, per month. Per month. And it was basically during the springtime. Now that the winter is getting better, we are getting more contractors out there to assist us on mostly the underground side. I mean, we've been reporting that we struggle on the underground sections during the winter. Now we are working with the consumers or the subscribers, and we're getting out there. I mean, we're digging their lawns, and you gotta work it out with them. So we're hoping to have a good section or a good portion, close to 80% of what is already built out, migrated to fiber. But we have the personnel. The biggest challenge we have at the moment is, as the consultants mentioned, is a $10 price increase or price difference between the two packages, which I think we're gonna address in the upcoming, we're addressing it later on today. So that's usually the biggest struggles. I mean, when the CSRs are calling and trying to schedule someone, the customers, they have to pay $10 extra. But aside from that, I mean, usually we're moving forward as much as we can. On the construction of phase 2 and phase 3, I think I already also mentioned something on the notes. We have the design for a good section of the town, except the MDUs. The MDUs, we're treating them separately. But for the section that we already have the design, we already issue an order for the materials. The problem is lead times at the moment. We are getting up to 50 weeks of lead time. So we do have a lot of stock, but not all of it. So we are working with the distributors and hopefully getting a better timeline on when products are going to be arriving. Sometimes they say 50 weeks, but sometimes they show up at 35 or week 40. So we're hoping that that's going to settle on the upcoming month as we're phasing out of the pandemic and manufacturers are now actually building products. The other issue is the inflation, which we have seen the cost of fiber has doubled since 2018. Again, it could be demand. So we are working with the distributors, and we're hoping to start. So we're hoping to start the build out for the remaining of the town towards the end of the year. Because that's probably when we're going to be receiving most of the materials, or we're going to have most of the materials for the build out.
So when do we sit back and say there's white smoke up the chimney, the town is now fibered? I think that was the question.
Yeah.
Okay, so our goal is 2025. That's our goal.
And is there some kind of, if I'm a Shrewsbury resident, which I guess I am, is there something I go on the website and get a feel for when I'm going to be fiber?
So we do have a schedule that is showing a map of sections that have fiber available, and we do have, yes, the estimated time on when the remaining of the sections are going to be built out.
Mike, that's SELCOupgrade.com for anybody who's watching at home and wants to check it out.
SELCO update.
Upgrade.com.
Upgrade.
SELCOupgrade.com.
All right, so now we have the timeline, and then there's a discussion, and I want to make sure I fully understand it, of a 2027 date. Is that a date in which we're looking to switch everyone from a box to fiber, or is that a date in which we're hoping to get off a cable altogether and go to streaming, or is it both?
It's a little bit of both. So we have to break this into two phases. First, there is the migration of internet subscribers. When I say internet, that includes phones, Wi-Fi. So there is that migration of subscribers to fiber. There is a report that we send every month showing how many subscribers are already on fiber on specific areas. So for example, we have a few areas already around 80% already migrated to fiber. But we still have the cable services. Cable services are, as of the moment, we are providing them over set-top boxes. So as soon as we have the Minerva product completed and ready to be deployed, of course, the marketing team is gonna start aggressively trying to reach out subscribers and try to get them migrated to Minerva, which is that bring your own device, a streaming type of service. So we're hoping to have all those subscribers migrated. I think, to be honest with you, that conversion is going to be quicker because that's more based on the subscriber. That's more based on, do you have a Fire Stick? The subscriber has a Fire Stick or a Roku TV or a Smart TV. It's going to be more on them to get that migration completed. Because there's no construction. There's no construction on that end. Once we have the app available, subscribers will be able to utilize it.
And when is that date for Minerva?
So the date for Minerva at the moment is delayed. We're hoping to have it hopefully by August. We're still working on contracts. There is a couple of so Jackie has been working with providers like HBO on the contracts, negotiating it. As we are getting also new features, that we're getting, like, for example, every single program that HBO is currently showing today is going to be available at the app. It's going to be pre-recorded. So whatever was played yesterday at 7 p.m., the subscribers are gonna be able to go in and actually stream that. That's a service that we don't have today. So that's why the contract negotiation is tougher on that end. So Jackie is arm wrestling them, literally.
And just keeping on this track, is there a precedent among other munis in Massachusetts, among other munis generally, or among other large cable subscribers to have an end date, such as 2027, for streaming only?
Not that I'm aware of.
Braintree actually discontinued their cable TV totally, so they don't offer television at all. I think they killed that in 2019. For us, once the Minerva stuff is set up and ready to go, I think our goal will be to migrate people as quickly as possible, because while we're still relying on the RF plant for internet service until the end of the fiber project, that's not tied to Minerva. We can move people over to Minerva whether they are served by RF or fiber. So the quicker we can stand down that legacy video plant, the better it'll be for us, because I know that it's a little bit fragile at this point, it's aging, and that'll reduce the amount of maintenance and capital expenditure that we'll need as an organization to keep that going. So once the Minerva is ready to go, it'll be a concerted effort to reach out to those customers. And as Joelle said, there's sort of two different buckets. I think with Todd and Curtis making that 2027 date, they're saying you really need to be done with your legacy plant by 2027. Hearing Joelle say 2025, I'm certainly hopeful that we can stand down that old RF plant 2 years ahead of what Todd is suggesting is the end date. So as we work with the Minerva, my intent is to tell customers the RF legacy television plant will have an end date. We'll have to pick something, whether it's by node or box type or throughout the town, we just pick a date. But I think the goal there is to try and get that stuff shut down.
I would just add one thing to that. I think it's a feather in Shrewsbury's cap and our cap that we have this ability to migrate to an entirely fiber optic based plant, whereas, you know, certainly a major provider like a Comcast or a Charter has so much territory that's looking at return on investment of converting an entire HFC infrastructure to fiber based. I don't think they could make a declaration for something like that, whereas we're literally, versus the opposite, I should add, which is a town standing up municipal broadband today doesn't have a transition period even to factor in. So I think we're in a ahead of the curve situation where we have a legacy plant that we're converting to a modernized fiber optic infrastructure that comes along with this transitional phase in the 2027 date to make that swap.
And that's helpful. And then if Braintree is our leader here, and that's the only one we can maybe learn from, has we reached out to Braintree and figured out what was the resistance, what were the successes, what was the kind of customer reaction, what's the customer satisfaction?
So Braintree actually doesn't provide television service at all. They got out of the business, and actually they got out of the internet business, was it earlier this year, late last year? So they're actually not a peer of ours.
Sold out.
They didn't switch
Sold out.
anything.
In that term, they're no longer offering it. And Mike,
Comcast, right.
Mike, it was, I've had some conversations with folks at Braintree over the last couple of years as these things were coming down the line. And really, it was the CapEx that they needed to implement an overbuild of themselves, like we're doing for fiber. It wasn't something they wanted to tackle. The transition of the video from RF to IP was a little challenging, and maybe Chris has better insight into that, but I think that they decided that they wanted to just be an electric utility, really. is
So, I
what
mean,
it came
basically a
down to.
Comcast or somebody took over for them.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So
Now,
it's a
now
different
to add
model.
to add a little bit more to your point.
Yeah.
So, for example, we work with Norwood on Taunton, on Sterling, almost on weekly basis. So that they are also in the process. Norwood is also in the process of research. Norwood is the other municipality that has video services aside from Shrewsbury. They're also in the process of researching that over-the-top streaming. And they've mentioned they want to see how we do it, so they can learn from our mistakes, basically. But we keep them informed on everything. We do. I think you guys are aware. We do share services with them. So there's a lot of collaboration between our municipalities.
There are friendly public power organizations throughout the country that we have relationships with that also offer video. I know Frankfurt Plant Board in Kentucky, a friend of mine over there, they're launching Minerva as well. So I hit Harvey all the time asking him what he's up to, and he asked me what we're up to. So, it's not strictly just Massachusetts.
Yeah,
it's
right.
a transition that people are seeing kind of throughout the country, so.
I want to just mention, is there a concept of inverting pricing where you're actually increasing the pricing of the cable, kind of the dinosaur, and reverse, so inverting, so making it an incentive to switch to fiber rather than what our original kind of, I guess, concept and what made sense. It's a better product, therefore we should charge more.
That'll be item 7
Okay.
today. We'll be actually discussing that specific principle. Right.
If I may add
sure.
one more detail, I think that's also part of this work that they just presented on, is also helping position the business to be more independent of the TV service, so we can consider all those options with respect to pricing models on that actual TV product, as opposed to, say, being reliant in this case that we touched upon, reliant on the box rental fees and things like that, where we can start to look at those costs and see how much of that is actually part of a future pricing structure.
I guess my only, I think it'd be wonderful if this town could be streaming only 5 years from now or 3 years from now. That's a huge success. My concern would be, embracing those folks who aren't as comfortable with technology and how they embrace the technology and understand it. Because even at my age, I remember turning a dial, right? So folks older than me, they remember turning a dial. And we've gone a long way to then pushing a box, to hitting a remote, to now getting it on internet. I mean, those are huge changes over time. And there's a point where someone, when they age, or just some folks, just stop at a certain spot in their technology and say, okay, I'm done. That's as far as I'm going to know how to do. And I'm just concerned that access to video and and more important, access to information, and to keep informed that somehow that's a service that we're providing. And So as great as it would be, because I think most of us are streaming more content than anything else, I just would want to have that lingering concern that we also have a duty to the community to have, access. So I guess that comes maybe with satellite or with, going back to turning the dial with antennas. But I think that education and figuring out how that would all work would be.
So it's a set-top box so you can bring your own device, or we'll give you a set-top box. The app rides on the set-top box, but once you're in the app, you have a program guide. It lists all your channels you're using, buttons on the remote
It's intuitive.
to navigate through.
Yeah.
It's close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not. There's a learning curve. If you move to another town and you got another cable provider or you got another
Sure.
satellite provider, there's nuances of the actual guide that you're going to be using, but it shouldn't be so foreign.
Right.
Where I will say is probably going to be the most benefit is people who have basic or expanded today. They only have a dumb box, so there is no interactive program guide. They just get the channels, and there's like a scrolling guide on channel 31. They'll actually have a better user experience in that they will have access to an actual interactive guide and also the DVR, as Curtis and Todd had mentioned, there'll be a baseline DVR, so cloud DVR service. They can record programs and the playback stuff that Joelle's talking about. So I think it'll be an improved experience for those lower users who've been using the DTAs. Plus, everything's HD, right? If you are expanded or below right now, you're not getting HD channels,
Or 4K.
right? And we'll get to 4K next, so.
Okay.
Okay.
Tony, anything else?
No.
Okay. I don't want to open up another big discussion, but I think one of the things that was brought up is it something that we are looking at the board is we have to get ready for the franchise agreement and the meetings with the town. And I think it was very important that, to point out that one of the things that right currently that goes on is part of our agreement with the town is based on the number of people that we have that are on cable. And that number is continuing to dwindle. And so that's going to be part of this discussion as to whether we, go from a franchise agreement to a payment in lieu of taxes and what in the future. So more to come on that one, but I think that just be, open on it. It's going to be an interesting discussion, both on cable or on electrical and, on electric and cable, right? Okay. Any other questions?
Chairman,
I'm sorry.
Can I just ask one
Oh, yes, sir.
last quick question? Jackie, when Minerva comes full steam ahead, obviously televisions will have the app. Will it also be available on mobile devices?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
That's going to be attractive, whereas I think a lot of people that went away from cable, to your point, Bob,
Yep.
I think that might lure people back in because, local sports, local news, now all of a sudden you can get all in one place. It becomes that much more attractive.
Okay. Do we have any other questions for our fine representatives from Smart Source? Or can we allow them to? Okay. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to work with you. Keep doing great things.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, I was remiss in going down my schedule and caught it, is that there was an item 4, which we should be able to get through here, is the vote to approve the GM contract adjustment per the 5/24/2022 executive session. And there's a motion. The bottom line is we've had an executive session. We've talked with the town, with our general manager and have reached an agreement on a contract. And what we want to do is have at least a public acknowledgement of the fact that we've had that meeting, and so as such, we have a recommended motion to amend the general manager's contract as discussed at the Shrewsbury Electric and Cable Operations meeting on May 24th, 2022 in executive session. Do I have a motion to accept that motion? Yes. No?
Second?
A second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. That motion is moved and accepted, so I'll get back to our regular schedule. I apologize for having gotten off track. On 7 is a review and consider approval of the internet rate adjustment. Amazingly enough, one leads into the other. There we go.
So Smart Source teed us up very well for this conversation. As you know, when we launched fiber in the early part of the pandemic, it was a little ahead of schedule. So at the time, we were pricing fiber based on some loose analysis done by consultants in the initial fiber analysis, as well as some feedback that we'd received from customers about fair fiber pricing through our customer satisfaction survey in 2019, I believe. So when we launched the fiber product, we had silver, gold, and platinum, or our standard coax offerings. We went silver plus, gold plus, and platinum plus, which are the symmetrical fiber packages. They're a little bit faster, they're symmetrical speeds, and they were priced at $10 more. Again, we did this ahead of schedule because we really needed to get folks off of those coax nodes where fiber was available to reduce the need for us to intervene and split those nodes to support everybody when they moved home for work and school. Now we're into this couple years, and we're seeing that the price differential is really slowing adoption. So in looking at the analysis provided by SmartSource, the cost to maintain and operate the legacy plant is actually going up with inflation. So we had three different options. One is leave it as is, $10 more for fiber. Option number two would be increase the legacy costs by $5, lower the fiber costs by $5. That makes all the pricing equal. So silver plus and silver, same price. Gold plus and gold, same price. Platinum plus and platinum, same price. That overcomes that differential. Or in theory, we could lower the fiber cost by $10, but it doesn't solve the revenue issue. It does overcome the objection to cost increase. So teeing up the conversation, we believe at this juncture it makes most sense to levelize the cost by coming up 5 and down 5. So our legacy customers will get a $5 increase, and our fiber customers will get a $5 decrease, but in moving forward to migrate more customers, it'll be an easier lift for us.
Could I just get a better understanding on when you said the revenue concern, or what, I don't know.
Sure. So with the higher cost to continue to own and maintain the legacy plant, we still need to. There are inputs into that system, right? Whether it's equipment, employee time, maintenance, contracts with our other vendors and providers. Those costs are going up, even though the system itself is not changing or improving, right? So the cost to provide service on that legacy system is higher.
Do we have a sense, though, of what $5 down, $5 up, say if we go that route, what that means relative to, I don't know, either covering expenses or profit or revenue or any of the above? Like some kind of the financial analysis that relates to what you're representing?
Sorry, Joel, say that?
That was about 700,000.
Yeah, about 700,000.
That wasn't in Todd's.
Yeah, it was in the report, I believe.
That's in
Can we
the,
discuss a little bit?
So what's the gain here?
So it's 700,000 in what direction? Like,
To the good.
to the good if everybody.
700,000 increase in revenue?
So I think in the package Smart Consulting provided, they gave a breakout of a couple years plan, and they were showing how if we went down that route, what the financial impact would be.
So have you guys, not independently, but have you guys adopted these numbers or verified the numbers? Or are you in agreement with, is this analysis? Is that how that
Yes.
works? Okay.
and I would just add on that, so that the $10 currently is on fiber-only customers. So clearly that number is driven by a $5 increase on a much wider customer base. And so if we have the general rate increase on our current existing RF plant internet subscribers, that covers, that generates that much more revenue on the order.
Or it'll be neutral with conversion, because as they convert, they're just carrying over the new.
Exactly. That's
Now, additionally, as we go down the road here, and we lose more cable-specific customers as they shift over, do we also run into contractual problems with each of the packets that we have, like for ESPN or whatever? That do they have a minimum number of people that we have to be supporting, and do we start paying penalties as that goes down further?
So the contracts are a little complicated, and there are definitely some minimums, but it's a penetration minimum. So it's based on the tier that the channel rides on, where if you're on an expanded basic tier, for example, you need to hit, for example, 80% penetration. So it takes the total number of TV subs, so your basic account, and compares the package to the total. So we may see some downward migration of channels into lower packages, more populated packages, to cover some of those minimums. But if we had 5 customers, we'd pay on 5 customers. I think at some point, if the numbers dwindle enough on the television side of the business, there would have to be some real conversation about what's the right minimum number of customers that justifies supporting that ongoing product. But I don't think we're there yet.
And I'm sorry, if I may add one more tangent, I think, to that other question. The other thing, and it's also highlighted in step 2, is we are updating our forecast to complete for the fiber project. And so that $10 figure was compiled pre-pandemic, pre-war in Ukraine, pre-surplus supply shortages, and that type of cost consideration. And so the other idea is to continue to get that forecast to complete, and we're in a very strong financial position, which is great, but also to make sure that we sustain that financial position, leveraging our majority customer base
Okay,
to shift that $5 there.
okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, could I just
Yes, sir.
further, I think a question kind of along the lines of what Chris was just saying. I'm trying to really just understand the drivers behind the $10. Hearing that there's the aging existing plant, but then also the cost of conversion, and relative to sort of the forecasting, understanding maybe in a world come 2025 when we made a full conversion and we have the project's fully complete, would we anticipate that the long-term carrying costs of the conversion would be sort of around the $10, maybe isolating some of the channel package negotiations, something along those lines? But is there a heavier weight given to the cost of keeping up the aging system, or is it the actual conversion and some of the supply chain issues and some of the upward pressures being put on from supply chain that are driving the $10? Because I think that could potentially influence the way we think about this.
So, go ahead.
Oh,
I was going to say, Matt, in addition to the cost of providing service to our end users, there are lots of costs associated with providing internet service to some non-paying customers, whether that's the electric plant, the school department, the town, that is captured with that cost differential to some extent. And Chris, you can weigh in on that a little bit more.
sure. I think that's a great question. So the way, I guess, my thought process has been for the $10 is the origin of the $10 comes from the CTC report at the outset of the fiber project. So that's that basic $10 analysis. And in this particular case, it's in that process, as we discussed, sorry to repeat it, but we saw that barrier to conversion with leveraging that $10 increase solely on the fiber project participants. And so now it's kind of a twofold, is to close that gap where recognizing there is an additional investment margin in there, so that keeps the $5. But then everything else you listed, which is impacting the the legacy plant, so we shift some of that $5 to that system, and so you were still achieving that $10 differential, and some of that advantage of having the $5 on a larger customer base helps offset the things that you just mentioned, such as the supply chain, inflation, and a suspected increase in forecast to complete for the overall fiber investment.
And there'll be some cost savings too when we can shut down that HFC plant. So the faster we get there, the better the numbers look.
And I guess that's where I was kind of going with that, Jackie, is this sort of a moment in time cost adjustment where down the road, the $10 might be $5 as the aging plant retires and some of these other, maybe even supply chain issues iron themselves out. some of these come together where $10, is that a long-term thinking, the carrying cost for the new fiber network, or as these other aging pieces of infrastructure transition, there might be an adjustment? So, I think what I heard you say, Chris, is part of that, the 5 is to deal with the aging, and 5 is just the carrying cost of conversion to fiber.
Exactly.
I think some of that, Matt, too, is hard to say at this time because of unknown circumstances. The one thing that cable has that electrical doesn't is we also have to keep competitive rates. So as technology moves forward, you're going to have higher bandwidths. You're going to have either see prices increase or decrease as technology moves with what can move down those lines. So we just have to make sure, and you saw this kind of in Todd's and Curtis's presentation, that we're not outpricing ourselves competitive markets and then all of a sudden have competitors try to come into our market for these things. So I think it might be too early to say in 3 to 5 years, is that $10 amount going to be permanent or reduced. I think it's going to change because of a lot of factors potentially in the next 3 to 5 years as well. But I think this is a good position to be in to make our best guess for what we're going to need from a capital expense and whatnot infrastructure for the next 15 to 30 years.
Okay.
In the memo, I did include a price comparison and called out whether it was being compared to coax, fiber, or 5G services. Today, our rates compare pretty favorably to other coax internet providers in our area. Where we are going to have a struggle, to Jim's point, is in a competitive environment compared to fiber or 5G. We're a little bit high, so we may be revisiting this if the numbers are working in our favor and we've found that costs are less than anticipated, where we may see rates go down over time. May see them go up. We're not sure. We have to take it as it comes, right?
But isn't this just an incentive to get people off of I mean, it's just.
Right now, it's.
Right, that's what it is.
What I
It's
see
just,
it as.
it's just an incentive to get people onto fiber that we've built out because we want them to change.
Well, I think that the prices are designed fairly. I think that the analysis bears out the justification for the $5 increase on the coax, just based on the increased costs that we're seeing. But
What blows us all out of the water?
but you're right.
Like,
I'm
what,
sorry.
what will blow this out of the water? Because right now we're dealing with inflation, right? Which we're like we don't know what's going to happen. Like, we really don't. Like, we don't know what's going to happen with the pricing of things. But we know one thing is going up, right? And then if we can't get product, then we're even like delaying the process even further. So, I mean, right now, how many people do we? How many potential customers do we have that should be on fiber and aren't?
So that's a great question. So right now in the GM highlights, Joelle provides a list of every node that fiber is constructed in and the number of customers who are remaining on coax in that node and have already moved to fiber. So you can see that we've topped off around 80% in a couple of nodes, and we think that that's about as far as we're going to get with the prices the way they are today. In a levelized world where there's no cost differential to move from coax to fiber, we hopefully we'll be able to get to 100%, because that gives us a little bit more teeth. We can say we are shutting down the legacy product on this node on X date, and we can tell customers, if you don't let us into your house to make this migration for you, your service is going to stop on whatever date. So while the total migration may take us another few years to get through, as Joelle said, maybe 3, we can still be discontinuing the legacy service node by node as we're reaching these 100% penetrations for the fiber service. And then further, as we go down the line with Minerva, if we concentrate in these nodes as well, we could actually conceivably node by node shut down the HFC plant totally, both for video and internet services, if we strategize about that in a reasonable way. So, but yeah, the sooner we're not supporting the HFC plant, that's a lot of cost that goes away, which helps us on our numbers in the long run, which is why that 5 and 5 makes sense at this juncture rather than just putting the full 10 on fiber.
Are we concerned with the backlash from the customers that have been paying the extra $10 this whole time?
So we've given them a $10 discount for the first 3 months. So it has basically kept their costs the same for the first 3 months.
Okay.
We haven't had any complaints from people who have already migrated. It's people who haven't They don't want to do it because it costs more. So by getting that levelized cost, I think that gets us over that initial objection.
Okay.
Well, I like the idea of the node by node. It's a great way to kind of piecemeal it out, and it's a terrific way.
And-
My only question is, is this, if I know that 10 divided by 2 equals 5, right? That's easy. But have you ballparked this? Like, why is it not 4 minus 6 or $6? Like, I don't have a sense of your analysis or that you've analyzed, or maybe you're just saying it's a crapshoot because I have no idea, so it's just 5 and 5, and we're just rolling dice right now, and that's how it goes, you know.
Yep.
And if that's that's the answer, then that's fine. It's just less analysis than I'm used to on pricing.
Well, I think the longer tail of getting the revenue from everybody matters, right? Because if it's just on the fiber, the fewer people you have on fiber, the less of that additional revenue you're getting. Todd and Curtis did take the analysis, and they recognized that we needed additional revenue going forward to support operations based on our current financial obligations and our current operations.
And they came up with $5.
And they said 5 would
Not
be
$5
sufficient.
and a quarter,
They said
not
five-
$4.75.
They said 5 would be sufficient. Right, I mean, it's a little bit of ballpark, right? But they thought 5 would be sufficient.
Nightmare for Jim.
Well, it's just that on electric, we're worried about, 22 cents versus 28 cents versus 12 cents. And here it's like, it's $5, And I get that, I guess, but I just don't know what the analysis is or what, here we are being asked to increase rates, right?
Sure.
But I don't have a sense of where you guys think the numbers are relative to, and so when I hear $5, 10 minus divided by 5, it just feels very ballparky, and that may be all we've got, and that's okay. And that's, as a commission, we decide, is that enough information to justify a price increase, which we're being asked to do.
I believe that in the CTC report, it was the cost of paying the bond that we had to issue in order to build the fiber to the home. That was that $10. That's what I believe. That's where the $10 came from.
So just to add a little more, when we were looking into this, our first question was, could we just remove the $10? And we started looking into what revenue will we need down the road. And one thing I started looking into was, you have head-end equipment. Head-end equipment only lasts, 5 to 10 years. It's not a 20 to 30 year useful lifespan. Once you get into fiber and stuff like that, you don't technically know the useful life yet. It's predicted at 20 to 30 years, but there really hasn't been enough fiber in the ground out there, to know that type of stuff. Well, in order to be able to fund and bond some of these things, from my research and understanding, you can't bond stuff that is a 7-year project or 7-year useful life type stuff. So we started taking into consideration all of these capital investments and things we need and things we'd like to have. And that's where Curtis and Todd came back and they said, well, you do need that $10. So then we looked at, okay, what are the other approaches that kind of get us what we need? And one, was, okay, what if we go 5 and 5? We did talk about what if we had increased the old plant, more than the new plant, but we were nervous about, is that really fair type of a thing? So you're getting a better product.
So if I may just jump in there. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. No.
So we do have 3, so hindsight 2020, maybe we shouldn't have released Smart Source so quickly, but they did propose 3 different spreadsheets that have that analysis. We used $10 as the baseline, as a starting point, because that was the historical figure from the original fiber analysis. And so we looked at the 3 scenarios presented here through that spreadsheet analysis that Todd had put together. And so in there, and that was that pro forma slide were the assumptions that we inputted into that analysis, and we didn't stray from the $10. To your point, we certainly could have, but we used that as our set figure. And so that's what we just used to toggle a bit. In that analysis are other components that pertain to the franchise discussion that aren't included in this and that have a factor that would create a deviation from that $10. But otherwise, there is a spreadsheet we absolutely could share that shows use of fiber, sharing of costs between electric service for use of fiber products, TV product, things like that, that go into a more robust rate analysis rather than using the $10 bond metric.
Maria, do you have enough financial to approve a price increase based on what we have? Or I mean, that's just my hesitation. Is, like I said, usually I would see a little more like, and maybe we don't know the answer, but our costs are X, and maybe our bond is X, and this will cover this. I don't have a sense in. I understand, Jackie, your presentation. It's a comparative analysis as to how are we competing? And that's a different analysis. You know, are we increasing so much that we're no longer competitive? So totally different analysis. But the other question to me is, what costs are we covering? Do we need to cover those costs now? You know, and is a price increase justified based on those cost projections? And if the answer is assumption, we don't know, that's fine. But and maybe in this report, and I'm just trying to flip through it or having read it and saying, gee, I guess maybe I don't understand this presentation relative to tying it in to a $5 price increase. So I sense I don't have enough information.
Sure.
And my guess is if I had it, I would agree with you. Yes, we need a price increase, right? I just don't know that $5 is the right number, but I don't have a sense that you guys know the $5 is the right number, and maybe your answer back is we'll never know, Mike, and that's fine too. But then we as a commission have to say that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Fair.
So we need to recover the $10, right? Like, that's something that we know we need to recover the $10, right?
The original assumption was that we
needed
$10
to, and
That's to pay the bond
to pay the
okay.
bond.
that was to bring fiber.
Okay,
However,
and right
this
now,
is like-
right now, we're operating on a positive budget, right? Like, we're not like in the hole or anything like that. So I think, again, getting back to my original comment, which this is an incentive to get people onto fiber. And this is, just the way to do that. The alternative, Mike, I think, would be for us, that wouldn't be as customer-friendly, is to say, we're shutting down your coax on this date, and you have to go to fiber, and guess what? We're not changing the rate. Or we keep the rate the same, or we drop everything $10, we don't recover the $10, and we just shut off the coax. I don't know if you've done that analysis where you've been like, okay, we're just going to shut you down, like you have to go to fiber, and we're not going to change the rate. We're going to keep you at the lower rate on the coax.
So they did that analysis. They took the $10 differential, they took 5 and 5, and they took, let's bring fiber down to what coax is. And where we landed was that 5 and 5 is going to give us the revenue that we need, in conjunction with some other unrealized revenue opportunities that we're seeing today. For example, the E-rate, some changes to the franchise agreement, pilot payments. So they did take a good look at those three options that we've presented in this.
And are we losing money doing that?
No.
No.
It was, so one of the things that's tough for your standpoint, Mike, from the, wanting to know these things, even if we make these changes, the unknown, what it's going to be is, when do people migrate, right? So understanding how many people you have on a certain rate is understanding, how much revenue you're bringing in. Well, that's where it's going to be the challenge of, as people migrate, how do you know?
But here it's a known, because if we increase and decrease everyone, now we've made it neutral. Every single customer right now is paying $5 more a month for the service. That's a monthly revenue number, and then an annualized revenue number, and then over time, an amount of money. The question is, so that's a lot more money, I think, projected than what we were expecting, because we never thought we'd roll everyone into fiber by August of 2022. So there's a lot more money coming in than originally than we had projected for when we were doing the $10 increase. It's got to be, right?
Well, you also have the extra $5 that today fiber customers are paying that they won't be. So you're bringing down the revenue on that side.
Rate for fiber goes down $5 for everybody that's on
Yeah.
fiber. It's,
Yeah.
it's the ones that are on the,
And isn't the goal to get more people on fiber
Yes.
and less
Yep.
people on the
Yeah, the
coax?
longer we
and on top
support
of
that
that, the folks
legacy.
who are on cable, because I'm for the $5 and $5 shift, just, in general discussion, because I think those that are on cable, the legacy, have got to also understand that they have to be putting something into the bank for the future to develop what's going on. And that $5 is not necessarily providing it any additional service to you, it is to prepare for the future, so that when cable finally do pull the plug on it, you've got fiber installed and you've helped to pay for that.
If that's the message, I'm for the $5 too. I just don't know the $5 is the right number. So and I don't know that we have the analysis of that, and I guess that's all I'm kind of questioning.
I don't think we're gonna know until
No.
we actually
Yeah.
implement it.
I think we do it and see what happens.
If that
Fiber
does-
goes up,
if that creates the incentive. So what happens if that doesn't create the incentive? Like, what's gonna be the next step? Like, how are we gonna get people, so
Well,
we
so
can start
that,
shutting
now
down
it's
these
easier to set a
nodes?
deadline, right? If
Yep.
there's no cost differential to move to fiber, if I tell you I'm shutting down your node on July 1st and you have to pay $10 more or lose service, that's tough. If I tell you I'm shutting down your node on July 1st, but your price stays the same, now we as an organization have an easier justification, like, hey, you have to move if you want to retain service. I think it makes it easier on the customer. It's certainly, as I said, the cost to support the legacy plant, inflation's impacting that. The longer we have to support that legacy plant, the more money we're putting basically into a stranded investment, right? We don't want, that's not our long-term goal, but we need to make sure that it's resilient through the end of the fiber deployment for our customers who are on that plant. So that's, I think, that the $5 differential.
And I'm sorry, I thought of one other potential noteworthy point, is, so through that spreadsheet, which we didn't show you,
You withheld all that information.
I know, I'm sorry. It showed that $5 wasn't a problem, but it also, it was, I guess that's the key, right? We didn't refine that. We plugged in the known quantities to see where we'd end up, and it came out favorable. Could those be adjusted based on renewed assumption figures, how many people adopt? Like right now, I think at least my primary concern is, as I'm sorry to repeat what everyone has said, is that we're relying on the $10 additional revenue from folks that are now saying, well, I don't want to pay the $10, and that bond has already been issued, and so we threw in as many assumptions as we can, and I think to maybe support your latter statement is we won't know until we have more data on the human behavior of the transition.
And I'll
Then
add,
we're only gonna be recovering $5, because as people transition over
Yeah.
to fiber, then we're only gonna be collecting
Actually
$5.
less, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're not gonna be recovering that 10 anymore.
Right.
But hopefully, on the other side of that, the expenses are going down, and we can eat that $5.
well, and to your point about the long-term projection, like right now, we're under a franchise agreement that ends March 28th, 2023. So we don't know what our financial obligations will be to the town until we get through that that franchise agreement negotiation renewal, right? So it's hard to say, we might be back here in a year and saying, hey, let's go down $5, let's go up $5. We're not sure, because there's a significant financial obligation associated with that agreement, which is up for renewal later this year, so.
Well, I think I got my answer, which is there are too many unknowns to actually know what the price increase should be. And so $5 just feels right. And if that's the answer, I'm fine with it.
It's one of the
That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, it's one of the scenarios we ran. There was no what's the perfect price number because of the too many unknowns.
okay, well, we have a recommendation that was given to us, and I think we'll read it and see if we want to take a vote on this. We recommend the commission vote to adjust residential internet rates effective August 1st, 2022, as follows. Increase the cost for the silver, gold, and platinum legacy cable internet packages by $5 per month to cover increased costs associated with support and maintenance of the existing plant. Decrease the cost for the Silver Plus, Gold Plus, and Platinum Plus fiber internet packages by $5 per month to levelize the cost of fiber compared to legacy internet service and speed customer migration to the new system. And finally, continue to evaluate the financial impacts of free services and unrealized revenue opportunities across other system and users, including electric operations, general government, and schools, to uncover further mechanisms to mitigate upward pressures on rates and create a more favorable competitive position with respect to other service providers. That was the recommendation that came forward after all the machinations of $5, and whatnot. With that said, do I have a motion to accept that recommendation?
I move that we accept that recommendation.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Matt, okay, with that, okay, the recommendation was accepted, and I agree with you. We take a look at the 5 and see what happens. We'll be able to, I don't think people are rushing now to call the front office to migrate immediately to fiber because it's $5 cheaper a month, but we'll see, there should be an effect to those nodes that are already in service where we thought we were at a high peak of 80%, see if we pick up anything on that based on.
We made the commitment to get this fiber out there, so
Yep.
let's get it done.
Again, the goal is to get people to get the nodes to 100%.
Okay, so the next item is review the electrical first quarter 2022 financial statements. Okay.
Okay. So before we start with the Q1, just one thing Maria had asked me to do was just to do a comparison of the 2020 Q4 unaudited to the audited. So this is just going to be quick, just to kind of give everybody an understanding of what happens during the audit. So we just go into the unaudited. Now, why do these happen? There are certain adjusting entries this year.
For some reason it's doing
Oh.
that one, Jim.
I'm sorry.
My apologies. I think you just have to present from here.
Okay, no problem. So let's go down. Basically, we have certain adjusting entries that happen. This year was one of the first times we did accrued payroll, which is just basically making sure the hours actually worked within the 52 weeks are the hours that are being booked, compared to just saying, you know, a cash basis of this is what was paid in the 52 weeks. We had some minor adjustment changes. We have to look at GASB 68 and then GASB 74 and 75. These are basically reporting requirements for your pension and your OPEB. And, it helps make sure the liabilities, the deferred outflows and inflows of resources, and your expenditures are all correct. So taking a quick look at this, this is what the income statement looks like. You'll notice that operating revenues decreased 1.6 million, and you can see some of the different areas that things are broken down by. And then if we jump into the balance sheet, and this is the asset portion, you can see here that we have, about a $10 million increase in total assets, and that's basically due to your OPEB and your pension. One's an asset, one is the outflows. But this information is given to us by our actuary. So that's why we don't have it prior. When we come down and we take a look at the liabilities in the earned surplus area, we can notice that liabilities increase about 9 million and over surplus increases about 1.4, and that brings you to the $10 million on this side. So quick recap. Operating revenue did not change. Our operating expenses decreased by 1.6 million. Our net income increased by 1.6 million. If you take a look at our balance sheet, our total assets increased about 10.6 million. Our total liabilities increased about 9.1 million, and our total earned surplus increased about 4.1. Any questions? Okay.
No, I just wanted us to see that because we base our budget based on unaudited numbers, but then when we get the audit, they change. So I just, we should be looking at those as well.
Good.
I liked it too. It was interesting for me to be like, oh, these are all the areas.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to jump into the Q1 2022 financial reports. And we'll take a look first at the electric income statement. You can see here our budget to actuals for total operating revenue is 1.2 million over plan. And, this one report for the year your quarter to date and your year to date's the same, so I won't separate them out. And one thing that I'm going to do going forward is I broke out the different categories for operating revenue, so we can start seeing all the different buckets. And one that'll be added as I can break this out will be for like the EV chargers. So we'll show another line for what revenue we're bringing in for those. Operating expenses, quarter or year to date, increased as well, about 1.1 million. That brings our operating income to increase, or over plan, I should say, is over plan by 61,000. Jumping down to our net operating income compared to plan, we are 55,000 above plan. Now, when we take a look at our overall operating net revenue, or our net revenue from operations, we're at a negative 1.3 million right now. So this puts us on for return on plant down to a negative 4%, and that's below where our target is. And we'll get into that more in a minute. Taking a look at year over year comparisons, we are, from total operating revenues, we are down 78K. From total operating expenses, we are increase of 2.4 million. Jumping down to operating income, that puts us at a decrease year over year of 2.5 million. And then jumping down to net income, that puts us at 2.4 million below year over year. Taking a look at the electric balance sheet, we can see our total current assets year over year have decreased 1.8 million. When we take a look at the total non-current assets, they have increased 6.9 million year over year. That brings our total assets to increase 5 million. Jumping down to the liabilities section of the balance sheet, our total liabilities increased year over year about 10 million. And this is primarily due to what we talked about earlier with the retirement pension and OPEB items. Earned surplus year over year is decreased 348K, and that brings our total liabilities and earned surplus increase to 10.5 million. Jumping over to our electric cash statement, you can see at the end of March, we're ending with 11.8 million for our operating fund. And on the side here, this, just so everybody understands, these totals just show the total year to date of what's been earned throughout this. So this helps when we're looking at, how much money do we transfer somewhere, or how much have we paid pilot payment, or any of those type of, debt services type information. Taking a look at our other funds, depreciation has increased, and we are at about 7.3 million as of March, and the PCA and construction fund and petty cash have stayed the same. So now we're going to jump into a little bit of a summary and discussion. So net income, it's a negative 1.3 million. So kind of looking into this, why is that the case? Well, operating revenue declined about 100,000 year over year. And this is something that we were kind of predicting, that our operating revenue was going to go down. When we look at our operating expenses, they increased 2.4 million year over year. Diving into that, 3.2 million of that is for generation, transmission, and purchase power. Those are the areas that we as a company don't really have as much control over. We have minor control in the generation and transmission. Some of that comes from us, but the majority of that comes from what we, contract with MWEC and from that area. When we take a look, 67K is from depreciation expense. This is just the natural increase from our, the assets that we've capitalized from the year before. and then $60K attributes to distribution, customer and sales, and G&A expenses. That's more what we have control of on our side. The operating revenue and expenses were 1.2 and 1.3 million respectively above plan, and this keeps our net income close to the actual projections because of how they went. So we're looking at the increase to power cost is the driving factor for the negative net income currently. As the effects, in my opinion, of inflation on the distribution, the customer service and sales, the G&A, we're not seeing those yet. I think a lot of those are really going to hit in Q2 of this year, because that's really, as we kind of saw the wind down of COVID increasing inflation, then you have the war in Ukraine really adding to that. And that isn't hitting until, in my opinion, more April, May, June. So as we see that, we may see those numbers increase. But basically what this kind of tells me through and through is we're going to need to see a rate adjustment on the electric side by Q3 of this year.
Could I just ask a question on that?
You may, because that's this next slide right there, Matt. Questions?
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. A lot of talk, a lot of buzz about basic service rates going through the roof in a lot of different territories. Leading things, looks like New Hampshire's going to double, and Eversource and National Grid basic service rates are going to have, devastating, I think to some people, increases over the summer with the summer rates. I believe their rate increases happen at a little bit of a different cadence than ours. But really on the generation side, talking about a Q3 rate increase and sort of projections ahead, how are we feeling about, this sort of dramatic increase in generation costs over the last several months, the inflationary pressures, modeling it out going forward, and, sort of being relatively new to the group here, not having lived through a cycle of dramatic generation cost increases. What is the cadence, going forward? This is gonna, we're not gonna be insulated from this, right? It's still the same sort of portfolio of assets we're getting our electricity from. How are we looking at that? How are we modeling how big an impact this is gonna have to our sort of basic service rates, and how, can we just dive into a little bit more detail on that? Because I think it is going to be pretty dramatic. There's no real way of totally avoiding it.
So one of the things, Matt, we're looking on at the same, just like we just did with cable, we have is it a cost of service or is this rate design?
Cost of service.
It's cost of service study on the electric side. And with that, we provided the newest updates from MWEC for what they have for projections of those costs. So that's how we're kind of taking that into account as we're looking at those items. Those numbers were provided to me, I believe, in February or March of this year. So they were not taken into effect during the budgeting process. And when I say they were given to me, they were actually calculated and then given to us later. We requested them when we were doing the increase to the working capital account, because I wanted to see the year forecast to understand certain things. But that's kind of where those items are baked in, and they're helping us understand rate increases that we will be proposing.
What's the historic lag of, generation costs go up X over a certain amount of time? How long till those price effects are realized into the rates for our customers? Do we adjust quarterly? How do we handle it?
We, through the generation and transmission adjustment, we adjust that twice a year, spring and the fall historically. And those incorporate a 6-month look ahead. or 6-month look behind for a reconciliation of prior expenses, as well as a 6-month look ahead for forecasted increases.
Okay, so similar to the public utility cadence.
Yes, sir.
Great, thank you.
Now, additionally, some years ago, many years ago, the town, there was the escalation of power costs. But I think it was transmission, that when they deregulated, I think, transmission, the town, SELCO, judiciously set aside, increased ahead of time the rates and accrued some funding that we've maintained so that we've at least have a balance. That as the rates go up, if go up faster than what we expected, we still had the 6 months worth of cash to be able to pay for those rates and make the adjustments. So we ourselves as an entity in the municipality have the ability to cover the cost for increased power, not going to be a day late coming back to the customers. But so we do have I won't say a nest egg, but we have at least a surge volume that we can go to help mitigate that. So that but what we're really talking though in this case is not only do we have the twice annual rate increases, this one may be as out of cycle look next month. I think we're going to talk about having a potential meeting in July to actually specifically drill down on the electric rates based on all those other entities you talked about, whether it's Ukraine or whatever, the natural gas being shipped overseas versus us being able to use it, because sometimes 70 to 80% of all power in Massachusetts is being provided by natural gas. Right. And so everyone's going to feel this pain. And so I think we need to address that. But I don't know, I'm rambling, I'll shut up. But the take of it is there are going to be a lot of challenges coming in the future.
Correct.
And I freely see, I don't know what's stealing my thunder, but I see anywhere from 10 to 15% increase in rates
A lot better than.
sooner rather than later.
A lot better than other places.
Oh, yeah, and that's something that's got to be discussed, but I definitely see that, the answer to Matt's question about, hey, what do you think, how is it exponential or whatever, I think it's going to be a hard hit.
In the tough part, just so everybody understands, this is an unknown period of time increase. So this isn't something that we could use any of our reserve funds for, because those are more meant to be used when it's like, for 6 months, we're going to see a little bit of a blip, and then, we can plan after that to bring back in our reserves, from like a rate stabilization perspective, where in this scenario, it's just too much unknowns for too long, and you wouldn't want to deplete anything like that to keep rates low, and then find out this is permanent, and now have to double rates even more to be able to recollect and to build that nest egg. But so, yeah, I'd agree with you.
So we have 11 million in cash, but some of that's being held by MWEC.
No, that's all with us. Some of that will be moved over in Q2 to be held with MWEC for the working capital. And there's other funds that are held at MWEC from the rate stabilization and other items. Those are not listed on this sheet. I'm looking at the possibility of adding them to this cash flow, but there might be too much of the dynamic shifts in what their values are to kind of give an accurate example. Because I look at the working capital basically as a retainer. So in my head, I'm going, okay, there should be a starting cost. I should be able to put what we funded every year. I should be able to put the increase for the interest we're getting, and I'm trying to make sure that works out. Then I tried to do that for the rate stabilization. Very different because it's invested.
Okay, so you're going to have fluctuations on a monthly
Yes.
basis, right?
Yes.
Okay. But that gets reported to you though, right?
Yes.
Okay. So now with these increased costs and with inflation, are we anticipating the funds that we're going to have held by them to increase as well?
No, so the funds that we are increasing with them would be what we need for this year. And that should be, basically what they're looking to have is any of their consecutive 2 predicted months covered. In the last analysis I did, everything for this year would fall from their current estimates perfectly in line, so we shouldn't have to borrow.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, it's a bright day today, and I've gone to the fuel mix for where it's coming from. And as of right now, the sun's out, 53% of the electricity that the people across the New England are using is natural gas. And 2% is nuclear,
Yeah.
and 4% hydro, and 9% renewable. And renewable considers, that includes a solar, which is only about a third of what's getting on renewable. It's mostly trash burning and burning of wood.
Yeah.
That's the renewable. So less than 3% of all the power that's getting generated for New England right now is solar on a bright day right now, based on infrastructure. And what's going to have to be built to get us to the, net zero. But bottom line, just so everyone's aware, that natural gas plays a huge effect on what's going on, and who knows where that's going to be headed.
Exactly.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on the financial report? If not,
Thank you.
okay. I don't think we need a motion to accept it. We've heard it. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that leads us to the final general manager's highlights, which we've stolen just about 3/4 of your thunder based on some of the other conversations that we've had. But the floor is yours, sir.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, that's, I think that was the intent behind the legislative bits in this round, were to just highlight the market conditions that we're seeing. So unless there's any particular items.
Well, the viewing public's not going to see it, but,
Oh,
I
that's-
mean, so the real issue is, why don't you just get just a couple of highlights just to let, why we're so concerned
Oh,
about where we're
sure.
headed.
Nope, good point. So, the big one that came out, end of last week, again, if you have, know someone or have a place in New Hampshire, the Liberty Utilities up there is on the other end of the scale, which they're quite literally doubling their rates. So that, and then, the consumer advocacy groups estimate that would be about a 47% increase to everyone's electric bill for an average user. So that's one end. I wouldn't even say that that's the extreme end. The prices are up in the day-ahead markets. We're showing that. That's, a couple of these, as reported by ISO, being the independent system operator. So that's up 129% compared to the previous year. That type of thing where, same thing, I tried to highlight some from around New England. Take Maine, again, if you know someone or have a place in Maine, that they did their adjustment back closer to the beginning part of the year, on the order of an 83% cost increase. And then they're also looking at and this is power supply, but then on their end, they're also looking at another distribution increase of another $10, which is a few more percentage points up in Maine.
I have no mercy on Maine because they didn't vote to allow us to have transmission lines to bring hydropower to Massachusetts, so may they rot.
Fair. Nice. So, again, that just sets the stage. Again, similar story in New York. So it's just, it's a wild time, and similar to a note made before with rate stabilization, at least in my past, typical large price spikes were driven by capacity market fluctuations, which again, 3 years ahead, they're set by an auction, so you can plan a rate stabilization strategy. This is just a whole new animal of inflation and volatility. But onward to what I would consider a much more positive note. We have had another retirement on our list of retirees in recent months. So Carol, our metering guru, 38 years. I think there's some additional time maybe in there, so it might have been 39 and a half. But we, congratulations to Carol again for another just great career and great tenure. So great for her. And that has, with these retirements, that's prompted some hiring. So just a quick update on that, where we had a good candidate pool for apprentice line workers. So we have a new name to the list. Will Ambach starts I believe starts today. So that's great. And then Joe Poulin has been working with us for several years. I don't know his exact tenure on the cable side. So he's done a great job for us on the cable side. He's done a lot of work, to my understanding, on his own, as a personal desire to move to line work. So he's been working, in his own time to work on the qualifications for that, and it showed.
So Scotty, what bait are you using to
Yeah.
steal these guys from Joel?
They like the group 4 thing.
Yeah, nice.
Who doesn't, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yep. And so, but he's gracious enough. Again, he's a key cog on the cable side, so he's agreed to work, continue his current role through July as we work on that transition. And that's also in that next bulleted list where we're currently conducting interviews for communications coordinator, customer service rep, and a fiber plant maintenance tech.
Can I just ask, Joel, how are you finding the availability of folks to work in cable with all the fiber work going on across the community? It must be very competitive to even find somebody to be able to come in.
Yes, I mean, the whole industry is moving in that direction. Even Spectrum, they did Princeton, the entire town of Princeton is on fiber. So even guys that have worked for Spectrum or Charter, or how we used to call it, they have some exposure. Comcast is doing the same thing. They are migrating to fiber. So a lot of the candidates that we're interviewing, they have basic fiber knowledge, and we're saying, okay, we'll finish that training in-house.
Separate issue, but I would like to see somewhere along the way our cooperation with the school department as to some of these internships they're trying to develop.
Sure.
To, especially with not being able to use, Assabet and whatnot to help. Maybe I don't know if there's some way that we can bring some of these students that might be interested in to work 1 day a week or something as far as the school goes, but to work whether it's cable or I think a line is pretty hard because of the safety issues that go with it. But there may be some experience that could be gained on that. But that's just a separate takeaway. And
Sure.
I apologize.
idea.
So then, again, happy to speak to any individual items here, but just our typical monthly list of electric operations projects ongoing. Again,
Well done on the EV charger here. I've seen a couple people using it. And, have we seen that is it being used fairly regularly, or do we have any sense of that? I know Pat Collins was instrumental in getting that pretty well hooked up, but and the line guys getting it installed.
I think as it gets more recognition through the app.
Sure.
You see increased participation, but there's always someone out there. I don't think it's been, I haven't seen any congestion yet where people are battling for spaces,
yeah.
but
Is it just one?
we have 4.
Yep. And by the way, I've been asked by a number of people, we are not providing free electricity.
No.
Okay, people pay using their app on their phone,
Right.
so it's not like we're, all in free, come on and get,
Yeah, we're not subsidizing.
Yes,
Yeah.
I can confirm we're collecting money.
okay.
So, yep, that's a key noteworthy point there. Just in the interest of time, broadband, again, as we spoke to before, that's our table. We incorporated the table to show homes passed, number of conversions, homes on coax and fiber, and the percentage. And again, some of our conversion feedback and sense of urgency is driven by the customer service folks who engage in the calls all day. I'm sorry if I mentioned this last month, but we've had quite a bit of success with our afternoon CSR who tries to reach people rather than leaving a message when people are at work or out and about during the day. We've had, I think, Jack can correct me if I'm wrong, but good success, with that after hours. We just a couple hours calling people as they get home that pick up the phone and don't have to remember, I got a call at 10. I'm trying to get, my foot in the door and everything. So that's been a big help. And this is, some of that feedback comes from them.
Great.
We talked about fiber lead times. One of the things that popped in my head that, again, Joel can quality control me on, which is, something just we're aware of and monitoring, is the fact that the larger providers have placed large fiber orders. And so, again, for some sizes, not all sizes, they're not, the manufacturers aren't even taking orders for new fiber because they're concerned that there's some, I think, lack of a better term, hoarding going on, and so maybe these deliveries might not even happen, and so they don't want to be stuck. So some of our fiber orders, they're asking us to hold off until is it July? So a few weeks more to see if their orders actually come to fruition. And then we talked Minerva. Then, again, just dovetailing, so the communications, the electric cost of service study, we covered that a bit. We're looking to incorporate a July meeting, so if we'll send around a coordination notice.
Well, actually, I think right now, why don't we discuss that while Matt's still on? If we have to have a July meeting, if we keep to the Tuesday morning at 07:30 schedule, either the 19th or the 26th would probably be more preferable. Probably later, it'd be better to give, because I know the ever-popular financial guru wants to make sure he gets his audit ready, so give him till the 26th. I don't know, anybody have any problems with, on the 26th of July, having a meeting? I know we originally said we weren't gonna, but I think it's important we get the rates and whatnot. Matt, does that be all right with you too? Okay.
Yeah, 26 would be great.
Okay, well, if we're all in concurrence, then the next meeting, and not to cut you short, I'll give it back to you, but July 26th at 07:30, we'll have a,
This room is not available on that day at that time.
We can work.
We'll figure it out.
we'll find something,
Yeah, we'll find.
okay?
Can't have it in your in your office.
Well, we want to get it videotaped, so it's a matter of just getting it set up. We can do
figure it
it
out.
somewhere. Okay. But we will do it the 26th. I think that's better than trying to jam it on the 19th.
Okay.
Okay. And anything else?
No, I think just, we incorporated some of the community outreach events that I think are just noteworthy. SELCO out and about, the MCAN Muni Summit webinar noted our prior efforts with the EJ resolution from the other meetings. So I think that's another feather in our cap. Jackie's now in full swing with the deed board of directors.
Great.
I think Pat Collins attended the, that's in here too, right?
We've been everywhere in the last.
I know, there's so many, there's a number in here. Heat pump event, just talking about heat pump adoption there. There it is, Orchard Meadows. Speaking to those folks, again, they're in that list, and so we're really trying to get out and about and talk about our programs, our services, gather community feedback, so we incorporated that as another statistic.
Yeah, and I've been chosen by the APPA, or American Public Power Association, as well, to be one of their 2 representatives to go to a training at called the Legislative Energy Horizon Institute, where you do 4 or 5 days up in Washington State, getting trained on the technical sides of power transmission, and then another 4 or 5 days in November in D.C., learning how to talk to legislators about. So behavioral training on my part, I'm sure. But anyways, it'll to be able to sell public power and do not. So that's pretty good. I think we're pretty proactive as far as Muni goes, as far as nationally and locally as well.
Yeah, that's good.
Trying to keep about what's going on. Great. Anything else?
Well, just not to leave out IT. We have a full IT complement now, so. Customer feedback has been good. Our completed ticket bar on the chart is nice and high, so.
Good.
So we've made good progress there.
Thanks.
Good.
Well, I'd like to thank Mark Serra, and specifically because we've had the pro from Dover actually running the show today for SMC, so we appreciate his effort. And with that said, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, everyone.